Hello, this is Julius from Basic Financials. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about gifts and the effect that they have on inheritance tax. Now, people sometimes say to me, how much can I give away? And the simple answer is you can give as much away as you want. Obviously, you want to be thinking you need to leave yourself enough to be living on, so that you are not scrimping and scraping and trying to find the next penny to get your food and stuff. You've got to make sure you're financially okay yourself before you start giving assets and money away. But yeah, you can give whatever you want to away. There's nothing to stop you doing that. But it does have an effect on inheritance tax. Now, it can be a little bit strange the way that it works. If you look on HMRC's website, they give some information, and it talks about gifts within the last 7 years of death and a taper relief. But you have to be careful how that is applied. Now, the basic rule, every individual gets an allowance of an inheritance tax nil rate band, which is taxed at 0%, and that's at the moment that's 325,000. We're in March 2019 at the moment, so at the moment the rate is 325,000 per individual. If you die, if your partner has died and they left everything to you, you can claim to take their allowance as well, so you would have £650,000. And there's also something called the residence nil rate band, but I don't want to talk about those things in this. I did that in a different video. This is really trying to stick to what happens with gifts in the last 7 years. Now, what you have to do is let's just talk about one person dying with their £325,000 nil rate band. But let's say that they made gifts in the 7 years before death. And let's say they gifted £400,000 to their children. Say 200,000 to one child. Let's say that was done. Say 200,000 was done. Let's say 6.5 years ago, and say another £200,000 was done 5.5 years ago. So £400,000 was given away, and the rest of the estate is valued at, let's say, £500,000. So the estate was worth £900,000 until that 400,000 gift was, or two lots of 200,000 gifts were made, and that's left £500,000 in the estate. Now you might think, okay, well, the value of the estate at death is 500,000. Take off the 325,000 nil rate band. The rest of the estate is taxed at 40%, so you'd have 175,000 at 40%. But it's not quite like that. You have to look at the gifts that have been made within the last 7 years, and the value of those gifts is taken off your nil rate band. Only if the value of the gifts are under the 325. Well, I'll start that again. If, let's say, in the example I've just given, you take the oldest gifts first, so there's £200,000 6.5 years ago. That comes off the 325,000 nil rate band. That doesn't create any tax because it's under the band, so there's no tax on that gift, and it leaves £125,000 left of the nil rate band. You then look at the gift that was made 5.5 years ago of £200,000, and you take that off, and that will therefore leave £75,000 of that gift, which is over the nil rate band. Now, so keep that in your mind. 75,000 of that gift is subject to inheritance tax. Because it was made 5.5 years ago, these taper relief will kick in. And what that does it effectively says that instead of being taxed at 40%, it will get taxed at a lower rate. Now, the way it works is the gifts within the last 3 years, or within 3 years of death, will be taxed at the whole rates of 40%. If it's made 3.5 years, so between 3 and 4 years, say 3.5 years before the death, then that would be at 32%. If it was made at 4.5 years, it would be at 24%. So you're taking 8% off basically each time. If it was 5.5 years, as in our case, it would be 16%. 6.5 years, 8%. And then if it's after 7 years, it would be 0%. So in other words, gifts made after 7 years, more than 7 years ago from the death, would fall outside and you wouldn't get taxed on them. So in our case, it was 5.5 years, so it is 16%. So of that £75,000, then inheritance tax at 16% would be payable, and that would be payable effectively by the person who received the gift. Now, the rest of the estate, £500,000, there's nothing left of the nil rate band to use because it's already been used up by those £400,000 gifts. So the rest of the estate, £500,000, would be taxed at 40%. Now, as I've ignored things like the nil rate that you could claim from your spouse if they left everything to you when they died, and I've also ignored the residence nil rate ban. But that gives an idea of how you have to be a bit careful when looking at those gifts. I hope that helps a little bit, and if you've got any comments or questions, let me know. And like and subscribe as usual. Thanks for listening. Bye.